Who are the best champions in Paladins, you may very well wonder. Well, you're in luck, as today I'm going to go through who I think are the best champions for every class in Open Beta 63, which has been an extraordinarily long patch this time around. As always with tier lists, they are quite subjective. Matchmaking levels can swing how good a champion is. Some people are just good with a certain champion, some champions are better on certain maps, and some champions may even be better on worse pings than others, and lots of other factors. Although, I have also more than ever before been using stats sites, as now the bettermeta.com has individual champion performance per patch with performance matched to a player's skill, which I find very interesting. But most of my convictions before going into the stats pretty much align toward the highest skill performance. And for the most part, my opinion of champions is going to be how they can perform played almost to their top potential and in regards to current patch balance. Also let me know which champions you think are best this time around in the comments section below. Anyway, with that long disclaimer out the way, let's dive, or perhaps bounce into the damage section. So first up is Bomb King, and this patch he really earns the title of His Majesty. Especially with the double frontline being a meta for so long and a staple in the competitive mode, the Sticky Bomb legendary chain reaction is the real frontline slayer. A few plops and say sayonara to a few of your subjects for some extreme damage. He also benefits from the vertical ability being curbed in recent patches, and dropping a poppy bomb mid-air in front of you and detonating it can disorientate enemies, create a distance between you and them, and let you duel on your own terms. Especially with flankers being so strong currently, you can actually kind of get away from them or at least put distance between you. The more I play with him and get used to the poppy bomb height, comboing with a slight jump or wall jump can get you to most ledges, giving you a definite chase and escape potential. Also to a degree, the stickies have had some help in being easier to confirm with champions zipping around a lot less, but on the flip side, with some of the movement speed stacking, with the addition of diminishing returns on and stuff like that, it can work the other way, make people harder to sticky. Adding to the extreme damage and some good maneuverability, the rest of Bomb King's kit is generally strong. Grumpy bombs are a constant grouping up and point disruptor, and can force the resilient pickups, and his ultimate is a fight winner in the right situation, although half of mine might accidentally poppy bomb myself off the edge of the map. I'm joking, but I do have some flashbacks. Up next is Charlene. Even with a slightly nerfed Desert Shadow with less invis time, Charlene still packs a massive punch, is maneuverable, and able to dodge within their withdraws. Plus is one of the champions that can break the double tanks and shields with relative ease, becoming a glass cannon in their planted, and being one of the champions that can dual flankers to some degree both in their movement and their damage. Plus the age-old wombo combo of Impaler Arrow planted or Impaler Arrow shot can be a kill confirmed or a dual winner too. Finally, the ultimate is strong enough to potentially win a team fight with some calm aiming and dodges, and with some morale boost and you'll have it up a lot. My only downside this patch with Charlene is with quite a few of the flankers being strong this patch, and most of them being direct damage, you might lose out having a blaster on your team. And I've noticed matches being slightly harder first hand if it works out this way, and in recent esports matches teams are often picking flankers over the selection of direct damage champions. Something interesting to point out. Next up, and a bit of a situational pick, is our dragon himself, Drogos, or maybe a lizard in a jetpack. But I don't think he's really a first pick or pick into buck. He's got a few things that you don't really want to go up against this patch, but Drogos, especially on tighter maps, can have a massive impact on the game, and consistently has been a relatively strong champion. And with Willow losing a wing, so to speak, through mobility nerfs that make her a bit harder to get around vertically, Drogos lost his going up really far potential, but still can reach most ledges, and honestly Wormjets can juke a lot of enemies on the horizontal plane. Plus slap in an instant killer ultimate and you've got yourself a potential point decider on your hands. So finally, a casual stomper currently worthy of a bemoaned mention is Vivian. Shielding an almost unlimited high DPS is a killer, and add in an ultimate that can stay with you the whole game that damages around corners, and you have something extremely frustrating to deal with. Sure, she's had a nerf, but I wonder whether she'll get a slight consideration at a rework of one of her attributes or abilities over another flat nerf, as nerfing her again might just make her useless. Maybe the ultimate itself could be rethought out, but again, she can't currently be used in ranked, but an extremely annoying factor in casual matches. Swiftly moving on to the flank category. Bulking into my top spot for flying tank self-healers, flankers, is Buck. I know it's been a while since he was actually buffed up into his state now with a shotgun / semi-automatic rifle with spread, but some of the esports enlightenment, the power of the healing legendary was shown to be a game changer. You have so much potential to keep yourself up, it's almost unfair. Plus, he borders on what Cassie used to be, a flexible damage flank, and you can sit back, do damage, always drop out of combat out of for heals and quickly get back into action again. There's very little downtime with the bulk up buck, and although it does tail off late game into the cauterize, it just means you can't be quite as Rambo and just need to find a spot around a corner to lose that debuff before healing up. So in short, buck can dish out the damage, has big mobility in the leap when they need it, and can keep themselves up all the time, so extremely strong this time around. Next up is Androxus, and he's been quite a glass cannon for a few patches now, being able to get close to enemies and melt face. Sure, his Dark Stalker got nerfed slightly, the legendary that gave extra damage when enemies were below 40% health, but the headshot card Hezul roll has gotten a buff with extra shots becoming more viable, and his Godslayer has always been a relatively strong pickup. Plus, even though his Nether Step Dasher's distance was nerfed a few patches ago, you can recoup a lot of that with the Nether Step card with the distance on the dashers, whilst keeping a lot of the cookie cutter Androxus alive with the reversal hit Nether Step Reset. You just need to lose a few cards and a slight bit of healing. And then you can use it to dodge, shoot, and then also self-heal in tough firefights still. Androxus 2 has a decent ultimate that can win a team fight in the right situation or just allow you to burst down a single target to bring things towards your team's favour. And Androxus has a relatively high win rate towards the high skill level, but has a very poor win rate towards the lower skill level, and I think he's one of the relatively more skilled champions to use even with the extra damage. And I mean, you can sort of just charge at people now, but you still have to use the dashes a bit if you want to be good. Use the verticality and things like that, but played well, a strong Androxus can really have an impact on the game. Another mention is for Eevee, so perhaps the most maneuverable character still, with the right hands on the wheel can be extremely hard to deal with, and has a huge snowball potential with the Over the Moon legendary damage and the Saw reset card to constantly have a high burst potential and mobility. She is very hard to play against an Androxus through getting into the air and bursting her down with hit scan, and the popular Bomb King who can lay bombs at the base of your ice block, but if they're not coming out, and if Bomb King's not banned, then she can be a worthy pickup. Another draw could be to add some blast potential if you have a Charlene or a heavy direct damage lineup. Still, I'm not what I used to be playing with her, and I'm a bit rusty at the moment, although I've been seeing her played very well. Also, I feel Talus is still a new champion and finding his feet, but he's got an honorable mention for Jagger Falls and Bright Marsh, tighter maps with the ability to get into people's faces and burst them down without them using their ability to dip out. Although his statistics are relatively low at every skill level, again he's still new and had a buff this patch, so we'll just have to see how that plays out. And also, with the 80% cauterize on your base kit, for 2 seconds, that's pretty insane, especially in the early game. It's tied to your overcharge. Moving on to the front lines, first up we have Thorvald, the Grandpa. Why? Well, he's got ally shields, the clutch denying enemy burst and finishers. In this flank meta, blocking aggression can clutch duels and block damage for your allies. And on the flip side, giving your own flankers extra survivability, damage and escape to dive in and out, and to really pull off the plays. Plus the massive crowd control in your Nullify, which was nerfed to be affected by resilience, but it locks down a lot of the mobile flankers and everyone wanting to dive in and out. Finally, with the nerfing of the vertical mobility, Thorvald again nudges towards the stronger end of the champions, and not to mention decent poke, self-sustain and recharge, and a potentially game-winning ultimate in Hyper Beam. Grandpa is strong. So next up is Terminus. The living stone marionette of the Magistrate has seen repeated nerfs, but is still seeing some rock-solid performance, due in part to his large damage sponge and power siphon that cannot be burst down, can be flicked on and off to clutch block pretty much everything. This is pretty much not counterable either, and you can stop so much. The area is also massive, and is very difficult to shoot past or behind him. The nerfs this patch and last patch have made it harder to spam, but is still the best shield in the game for the fact it isn't actually a shield. Terminus does have issues with mobility and engaging at range, but with health pool, AoE potential and damage mitigation in some cards and in legendary card, can overcome that, giving him sustainability and presence, plus Nimble 3 can get you into people's faces. The ultimate 2 is a pocket revive. Sure, most people will scatter, but getting back up just gives you 2 goes, plus using it proactively from death gives you some leeway to time it. This was also nerfed, but you aren't going to necessarily spam this ability, so I don't think it was a big effect, basically just made it harder to charge it up. In short, he's survivable, and makes his team survivable, even if he himself says he wants to die. He's by far statistically got the highest win rate of tanks this patch, even with the nerfs, and is still sitting pretty. Next up is Makoa, making an appearance on pretty much every list, and it's a pretty simple factor that makes him such a popular ancient turtle, and that's his hook. Sure, it scales with coordination, but without your allies having tunnel vision, you'll often get a guaranteed kill with a well-placed hook. Plus he has decent damage, shield, health, and a strongish ultimate. This is one of the champions that has a slightly lower win rate, maybe because he's so popular, but he's so potent against any enemy or composition if people are paying attention. In competitive mode, often one or two of the frontliners are banned out, and you're probably going to be picking up two, so it's worth mentioning some more. So charging close behind for me is Fernando this time around. Again, with vertical mobility being chipped away at every patch slightly, it plays to his favour chasing down foes and being able to blaze through enemy bodies on the horizontal plane. He's got an extremely strong ultimate when using it with your teammates in mind, and generally complementary to a lot of the direct damage in the other tanks' lineups. Also Inara with her insane survivability, stacking damage reduction, some craziness blocking caps and clutching points with walls, decent damage, and more CC with your Warder's Field and an ulti which can combo very well. She's definitely a strong pickup this time around. And in the middle of this patch, they seem to have fixed the diminishing returns, which actually nerfed her earlier in the patch. Although I'm still seeing her picked up a bit less than she was before. Finally, onto supports, and I cover this a lot, and the main healers are pretty much in the same situation. So for me, Maldamba, the Snake Charmer and Healer Extraordinaire, having a slight edge in how much impact they have in the match over Genos, the two main healers, with a slightly higher burst heal and team heal in the Gourd, which can be used to area deny, dismount, and charge that sweet ultimate. Oh, and did I mention the ultimate that sends enemies' arms flailing into your allies' guns? Sure, it can force that resilience, but then they've spent their credits to counter that out, and it's even great to single out an enemy target to make sure your team's potential at grasping a point win, and your escape can also clutch dodge enemy team wipe ultimates or one-shots with your invulnerability. And if a flanker goes on you, they better be ready to dodge your snake stuns and be pitted in a weird snake tossing, soaking floor slip and slide duel. Genos on the other hand has the potential to do more healing spread across all of his team at a slower pace and out of harm's way through a wall. Fantastically fun game mechanic, I may very well add. Thus, like when I talk about Buck having a high potential to constantly be an influence on the match, so can Genos because they have no downtime. Also, with holding a lane, corridor, or zoning out enemies with your rifle can have a higher impact on the general damage front, and also your own crowd control with the Void Grip is often slightly better than Maldamba's mini stun, working like Mikoa's hook, trapping someone for the kill. Downsides being enemies can jump out of it when you don't have the legendary no one takes, and you yourself are vulnerable until you run around a wall or a box, as you can't fire back and it would be wasted breath to delay your own demise. Plus, without communication, you can drag an enemy into the air away from an ally's finishing blow or disrupt their stream of fire. Plus, if an enemy flank does cotton onto you, it's not an easy duel and you are still vulnerable whilst you hover about. Again, very little between these two, as a mainstay healer both are picked up most games. So anyway, onto some more less heal oriented supports. Grok, our blue boy, can output a lot of sustained damage whilst acting like another frontline, whilst also having some healing, potentially a lot of healing with Totemic Ward legendary, and if the enemy team picks up an Inara, which is a popular this patch, the Warder's Field can be a lightning rod for your bouncing electrical balls. Maybe I worded that poorly, but you can catch my drift. Grok's blue, dabble dee dabble die. Plus with the double frontline enemies, they'll likely be packed relatively close together for lightning to flow, and in the Totemic Ward you can also counter out crowd control effects, and with the ward being buffed to be much harder to kill, could be strong against Mikoa hooks, Bomb King Grumpies, and much more. Seriously, denying a Mikoa hook and seeing the look of abject despair crinkle across their beak warms the orc's green blood. Does he have green blood? Who knows? Grok also has a very high win rate statistically at all levels of play, the highest of all the supports. And like I mentioned, a lot lies in the survivability and damage output. I think the dream of being a main healing Grok, but relying solely on Totemic Ward, still hurts, especially with not being able to keep your flankers up and full while they are doing their thing. Some situations I can think of are A, with a Buck that can heal themselves with their bulk up, because you don't need to be healing them whilst they're flanking around, and also a Torvald will be able to put shields on your allies, which could act like some temporary healing, so that might be some situations where you might pick up a solo Grok healer. Next up is Grover, and he can counter-stipe, stop enemy damage dealers from holding angles by throwing 2 hit-sized axes their way, plus generally having a big impact on taking down foes, especially on the longer maps like Frozen Guard and Timbermill. He's also ultra-mobile with the Vine, you can get around the maps with ease, and that's a big deal. Your ultimate early game can also keep a team fighting and win a point, but that does tail off, and your crippling axes can stop the flankers who picked a lot this patch from either chasing down your allies or you, and generally diving in and out of your own backlines. Some heals here and there can help a bit too. Finally, Pip has an honourable mention as the Vulpine of Mischief. He can have a big impact damage wise and has an ultimate that begs the enemy team to get resilience early on or face a dire chickeny consequence. It was also shown to be strong in the last patch's meta as a surprise winner in the esports tournaments for the HRX qualifiers. I still do feel that in the majority of hands he struggles at the healing role. The potion can slip between tiny cracks, a 1-inch ledge will block the AoE heal, and more quirkiness that makes him more of a self-healer and occasional team healer. Plus, he can square up to the enemy buck, putting out constant cauterized, having the ability to dodge around them and slow them down, affecting their chase. Anyway, that was my list of the best champions for every class this current patch. Again, be sure to let me know all of your champions in the comment section below and what you thought about my list. Do you think it was good? Do you think it was bad? Are you angry a certain champion hasn't been mentioned? Be sure to let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Joshino.